Brazil is just one of the many notable countries in the world that represent the raw beauty, diversity, and power of Latin America. Famous for its tropical beaches, exquisite waterfalls, unique culture, and tasty food, Brazil is a widely popular tourist destination and a place to call home. It is South America's most influential country, a rising economic power, and one of the world's biggest democracies. On the surface, Brazil's appearance and population seem to speak a lot about the country's overall economy and well-being. However, statistically speaking, those assumptions are not entirely true. The total population of Brazil stands at 213,445,417 people. Brazil's population serves as the engine of their economy, with Sao Paulo being the city with the largest amount of economic growth. The real GDP is $3,092,216,000,000. However, the real GDP per capita is 14,652. To put this into perspective, the real GDP of Brazil puts them at an impressive ranking of 10th on the real GDP world ranking, but Brazil's real GDP per capita puts them at a significantly lower ranking of 115th. Brazil also has an unemployment percentage of 11.93%, which includes the 4.2% of the population living in poverty. While these baseball card statistics are important and reflective of Brazil's economic status, they don't exactly represent Brazil's well-being entirely. In fact, there are multiple alternative measures of quality of life that statistics simply do not tell us that this video will cover. We'll first start with the level of wealth inequality in the country. In Brazil, there is a huge wage gap. It is not only between genders, but social classes. The top 6 people earn as much as the bottom 50%. The country's richest 5% have the same income as the remaining 95%. It's so great of a gap that most women struggle to get jobs. It is truly putting a toll on Brazil's economy. Despite having the same legal rights as men, Brazilian women continue to fight for equality in the workplace. The gender wage gap in Brazil is one of the largest in Latin America, and women earn an average of 30% less than men. As for the political and societal participation by marginalized groups, Brazil gave men and women the same access to education, improved maternal health, and reduced rates of adolescent pregnancy. However, not all women have benefited from these advances. In Latin America, a survey conducted in 12 countries found that between 25% and 50% of women had been subject to violence by their partner. Brazil, in a comparison of 83 countries, had the 5th highest rate of femicide. Women also continue to have limited representation in politics. Although the number of candidates has increased in recent years, the results of the elections did not result in women's increased representation in Congress. Indigenous women are particularly vulnerable to violence. In 2012, the average homicide rate among Brazilian women was 4.6 per 100,000. However, the rate was almost twice as high among indigenous women, 7.3 per 100,000. A recent World Bank study found that in 2010, women's wages equaled 71% of those of men. Racial inequality reinforces these disparities. The gap is even wider among more highly educated professionals. Afro-Brazilian women earn less than white women and men with the same level of education. On average, Afro-Brazilian women earn 7.7 reales, which translates to $2.50 per hour, compared to 12.5 reales, which translates to $4.02 per hour for white women, and finally, 50.6 reales, which translates to $5 per hour for white men. Afro-Brazilian women who completed secondary education earn half the wage of white men with the same level of education. As for the LGBTQ+ community, 68% of Brazilian LGBTQ+ people experience homophobia in the workplace, reducing productivity and retention. While Brazil has made some of the most progress in recognizing LGBTQ+ rights in Latin America, there are no laws prohibiting hate crimes, and reported rates of homophobia and violence against LGBTQ+ people are alarmingly high. Moving on to life expectancy, Brazil's average person lives up to be 74.98 years old. Brazilian men on average live up to 71.49 years, while women on average live up to 78.65 years. The homicide rates in Brazil have been fluctuating from 2006 to 2018, but in the most recent count in 2019, the homicide rates have hit an all-time low of 21.6 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. In addition, Brazil's suicide rates currently stand at 6.9 suicides in a year per 100,000 inhabitants. To briefly put these measures of quality of life into the perspective of the people, Brazil is ranked 44th on most stressed countries in the world.
As for how family-friendly the country is, regarding maternity and paternity time off, all female employees are eligible for maternity benefits, including when adopting a child. The maternity benefit will be paid to the employee for a period of 120 days and is paid by the INSS, the Brazilian Social Security Agency. In practical terms, the employer pays the benefit to the employee and deducts the amount from the Social Security contributions due to the INSS. Male employees are entitled to 5 days of paid paternity leave. Furthermore, Brazil has free public education up to postgraduate level for domestic and international students, so most public universities will only charge students a registration fee. Private higher education institutions will charge fees, and these will depend on the degree program that you choose and the university itself. Financing public education in Brazil is made possible through a mechanism that combines binding investments at each level of government with a national education fund. In regards to healthcare, since 1988, the Brazilian Constitution has guaranteed that everyone has access to healthcare in Brazil. This service can be obtained from the public national health system, from private providers subsidized by the federal government via the Social Security budget, or from the private sector via private insurance or employers. They pay nothing for doctor's fees, lab fees, hospitalization, surgery, or even prescription drugs. Brazil's national healthcare system is roughly equal to the caliber and operational style of the Veterans Administration hospital system in the U.S. municipal. Hospitals are widely available and provide free treatment, including emergency services to everyone. Healthcare is available to anyone who is legally in Brazil, which of course includes foreign residents. Those who cannot afford to pay for healthcare in Brazil use the government's free public national healthcare system. As for retirement, Americans can retire to Brazil on a retiree visa. To obtain a retirement visa, you must be over age 60 and have a pension that earns at least $2,000 per month. To apply for the retirement visa, you must apply at least 4 to 8 weeks before arriving in Brazil. You must apply through a consulate general office or the Brazilian embassy and provide several personal documents, including a copy of your birth certificate. Healthcare, including primary, outpatient specialty, mental health and hospital care, as well as prescription drug coverage, is available to anyone who is legally in Brazil, including people living there on retiree visas. Now, we move on to socioeconomic mobility. The average social mobility score in Brazil reached 52.1 points out of a maximum of 100. The higher the score, the more a particular economy provides equal opportunities for social advancement. Among the different areas analyzed to construct this index, Brazil scored best in technology access, where it was awarded 67.8 points out of 100. However, this score was relatively lower than that received in the same area by other thriving Latin American economies such as Costa Rica or Uruguay. As one of the most unequal Latin American countries, fair wage distribution was the social mobility area in which Brazil received the lowest score, at only 35.9 points. Finally, Brazil has a strong commitment to climate change. Recognizing the international call to mitigate GHG emissions, Brazil ratified the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, in 1994, along with the Kyoto Protocol in 2002. More recently, Brazil has signed the Paris Agreement, committing itself to emission reduction targets for 2025 and 2030. To date, government policy to reduce emissions has been largely focused on reducing deforestation through the Action Plan for the Prevention and Control of Deforestation and the Legal Amazon, PPCDAM, introduced in 2004. The Action Plan was established to coordinate federal, state, and municipal efforts to enhance monitoring infrastructure, which would become an important tool for enforcement activities. This contributed to a nearly 75% decline in deforestation rates in the Amazon region between 2004 and 2016, relative to a historical level, 1996 to 2005. As a result, Brazil has avoided more than 5.5 billion tons of CO2 emissions, becoming the global leader in greenhouse gas emissions reductions. In its intended nationally determined contribution, INDC, Brazil details its contribution for 2030, demanding quantified emission reductions targets for its energy and agricultural sectors, as well as for land use change and forestry.
All of the aforementioned facts, principles, and objectives of Brazil provide for a much more accurate measure of their quality of life. The statistics stated at the beginning of the video do not and cannot effectively tell us everything about the lives of Brazilians. From this deeper analysis of societal, political, and economic factors of Brazil, we get a much better sense of what it's actually like to live there.